Welcome, everyone. We are going to be ready to start now. Let me see. Dr. Moses, can you send me the document? I don't have it. Please.
I don't either.
Okay, let me start with another document. Okay. Mhm. Okay, I think we can call this meeting to order. It is 7:14 on June 15 on 2023, and this is a public meeting of the City of Portland Police Accountability Commission, a full commission meeting. If the Spanish language interpreters can please give the information on the Spanish language interpretation. Liz. Okay. Can any?
You might have to go ahead and do it, Victoria.
Okay, I will do it. Esta junta es una junta pública sujeta a la ley estatal de Oregon y a las reglas administrativas de la ciudad de Portland, y va a ser grabada. La interpretación para español está disponible para esta junta. Cuando usted quiera tener acceso a la interpretación en español, usted va a ver en su video a las personas que están hablando, pero en el audio usted va a escuchar a los intérpretes. Para tener acceso a esto, por favor, haga clic o presione donde el pequeño círculo abajo donde dice Language Interpretation o para interpretación del lenguaje en los controles de Zoom, abajo de su pantalla, y seleccione español. Thank you. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided by ASL interpreters. Please pin their video feed to see their interpretation throughout the meeting. The closed captioning is turned on in Zoom as another means of assistance. but please note that this is an automatic captioning services and is not always accurate. The city support access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other language support as well. Please email in advance of future public meetings, either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to policeaccountability@portlandoregon.gov to ask for other access assistance, including interpretation into other languages. This meeting is a public meeting subject to City of Portland Administrative Code and Oregon State Law and is being recorded. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be able to ask questions using Zoom's Q&A feature. As the commissioners are presenting and or discussing things, if attendees have questions, please feel free to submit them through the Q&A. We hope to use this feature to help guide our conversation during the meeting and future meetings agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that no questions will be answered during the meeting, but if answered, both the question and answer will be visible to you and will become part of the meeting record. To access this feature, just click on the Q&A icon and in the middle of your screen. Now I will pass it to the co-chair team to do the land acknowledgement.
Let's see, I need a second. I was expecting co-chair Christian was going to do the land acknowledgement.
Okay. Either way will be fine. Mhm.
Do we have a copy of oh, maybe I just heard.
I'm just trying to pull it up. Yes, I'm sorry for the delay, everybody. Okay, yes, I'm ready to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank
We
you.
acknowledge that the rivers, lakes, streams, and lands of the Lower Willamette River rest upon the occupied territories of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, and many other tribes. We recognize the many villages, traditions, cultures, and relationships that existed along the river since time immemorial. We recognize these tribes stewarded these lands and rivers since time immemorial for future generations. We recognize and undertake responsibility for the destruction of the river and land, of traditional food sources, sacred places, and multifaceted ways of life. We acknowledge the economic and social values that enabled the harm to the river, including systemic racism, classism, and other systems of oppression that perpetuated harm against Black, Indigenous, and immigrant communities along the river. With this acknowledgement, we commit to honoring and learning from the past and working towards a more equitable and sustainable future for the Lower Willamette River. We commit to seeking solutions that acknowledge the inequities of past socioeconomic policies and the harm done to people and our relationships to these lands and waters. You're muted.
Thank you. Now we will pass to the revise the community agreements. I will remind everyone that these have 3 pages. Please read to it, and at the end, I will ask the question. Thank you. Okay, let me ask all of you. Do we all commit to following the community agreements for today's meeting and to gently calling in our college and collaborators if needed? And if I can see your thumbs or your hands, they all agree? Thank you very much. Now I will pass it over to the co-chairs to discuss the timeline.
Okay, I'm Debbie Iona, she, her. I'm one of the co-chairs for this phase of the process. So we're talking about the overall timeline. The Police Accountability Commission has split its work into 6 phases. It is now the fifth phase of work, transition plan and broader system. The commission will work until the end of August 2023 and will present its proposal to the City Council for their consideration and approval after it finishes meeting. The next slide shows the outcome documents for the transition plan and broader system phase based on the agenda and scope approved by the commission. Now that the PAC has developed a rough draft of what the new accountability and oversight system will look like, the PAC will in this phase develop a transition plan for how to get from here to there, an understanding of how the process of implementing the new system will change or interact with other police oversight systems and levels of government, and also will name the new oversight board and bureau. Our subcommittee is focused on the second item, developing draft areas of agreement on broader system. Okay. The next slide is the current project plan for the transition plan and broader system phase of the Police Accountability Commission's work. This slide is for members of the public to be able to understand how the commission gets from now through the end of the phase. Today's meeting falls into the big blue box with the purple border located in the middle portion of the screen. Okay, and then next is, yes, okay, following today, here are the upcoming meetings of the PAC. We'd like to highlight the subcommittee on broader system meets next Tuesday, June 20th from 6:30 to 9. And then the subcommittee on transition plan meets next Thursday, June 22nd from 6:30 to 9. The next full commission meeting is Thursday, June 29th. And then we're going to talk about the purpose of today's meeting. Today we will discuss the areas of agreement on name and other details, which will include brainstorming names for the Oversight Board and the Oversight Bureau. No decision on the document is expected today. We will have public comment and then discuss next steps, including phases of work, transition tasks. And one thing to note is if you saw the agenda that was out earlier today, we were anticipating that the police commanders, gosh, terrible, I don't remember, officers, the union for the lieutenants was supposed to come and speak tonight, but the person who was going to come just had a very big day at work, and it was, it wanted to ask to reschedule, and we agreed. So that's how come things are a little bit different than what we had expected. So thank you all for being here. And I forgot, I'm supposed to tell this too. And we'll have public comment and then discuss next steps, including phases of work, transition tasks. And we'll have updates on the subcommittee on the transition plan, the subcommittee on the broader system, community engagement, and budget and staffing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. We are going to hear from subcommittee co-chairs about where their subcommittees areas of a subcommittee are at. And then we're going to hear from staff about community engagement and about the budget and the staffing for the PAC. I will pass it to Commissioner Catherine and Faith, and then to Commissioner Casey and Commissioner Sima.
Thank you. Victoria, I am Catherine McDowell. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the co-chairs for the transition plan subcommittee. And our report is that the transition plan, which is the work product of this subcommittee, is coming along. We had a meeting on Monday evening where we went through a draft of the transition plan from start to finish. Got some good comments, and Commissioner Faith and I met with staff today to try to integrate those comments into a draft, which will be going out to the members in time for them to review in advance of our next meeting, which is now scheduled for next Thursday. I do want to say that we also had a briefing from the chair and vice chair of the CRC, which was super helpful, as we do envision that CRC will play a role in the transition process. And obviously the timing and nature of the transition is critically important to the CRC. So we really appreciated hearing from them. And I think that was a really good way to, as we were working on refining our draft transition plan, to have input in real time from folks from the CRC. So I think we're on track to potentially complete the draft transition plan at our next meeting next week. If we don't complete it, we do have 2 or 3 outstanding issues that we need to discuss. If we don't complete it, we'll have, I guess we have one potential meeting at the end of the month, but then we'll have the transition plan to present to the full commission by the end of June. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Now we'll pass it to Commissioner Casey.
So the broader system subcommittee met on Tuesday. It was our 3rd meeting, I believe. We have a document that walks through sort of all of the different areas that we envision having to comment on in our areas of agreement. And we got through basically all of them. I think that for the majority of them, we are ready to sort of do a final read through of the document and potentially arrive at consensus to take the document to the full commission. There are a few items that needed some more work, and we got a lot of feedback from members of the subcommittee and a lot of feedback from members of the public. We've already been working on sort of drafting some changes that incorporate that feedback. So at our next meeting next Tuesday, we're going to have an opportunity to review those sections again. I think it is not out of the question that we could finish the document at that meeting, but if not, we still have time available for us to finish it after that. So I think we're making very good progress, and I'm excited to have our next round of discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Co-chair Debbie?
Is it okay to ask a question? Or is that out of order?
No, you are the co-chair. You can ask.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Victoria. So Casey, I just have a question. At the meeting, at the broader system meeting, there was a mention of the a questionnaire that went out. Can you kind of give us some information about that?
I think Samir might be able to speak at least to what our responses have been and things like that. Those haven't been coming directly to me.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And I think staff will be ready to answer questions maybe in their report. Is that okay? We continue. Oh, go ahead, staff.
That'd be perfect, actually. Thank you.
Okay. We will continue with the agenda, and we will take a short break. It's 7:31. We will come back at 7:38. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We're gonna resume the meeting. Now, a next item on the agenda, we're going to hear from full co-chairs about the document. We're gonna go into discussions, and if the co-chairs can, yes, staff?
Yeah, I think just maybe with the break got skipped, but we have a couple staff updates too, just to wrap that up before going in.
You're right. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Thank you. As I think Austin for community engagement.
Yes, hello. Thanks, Victoria. Thank you all for being here tonight. Sorry about the last minute switch up, everybody who's attending in the audience. We really appreciate you being here. So thanks for bearing with us as we're trying to last minute reshift our scheduling and programming for this evening live as we're doing it. So I use she, her pronouns, and I am the community engagement and communications coordinator for the PAC. Just wanted to come and give you all an update that we will be having a virtual community info session on Tuesday, the 27th of June from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And I'll put all this in the chat as well. This will just be on Zoom, and I will also be sending out an Eventbrite link where you can RSVP. And then we will also make sure that the Zoom link is on the website page for this event. After that, we will be doing an in-person community engagement event, a community info session on July 11th. That one is going to be in person from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and the location right now is TBD. So I will let you know when we know more about that as far as where that's going to be. And then we've got one more community engagement event that will be happening in July, and then 2 that will be happening in August. And that will, for the most part, be completing our community engagement events. So we've got 5 more opportunities for you to get involved if you want to. These events are shifting a little bit more. They're going to be heavier presentation focused on presenting the policy, everything from, you know, like board makeup, how many people, staff, things like that, down to the complaint process. And so we just had a community engagement event at the St. John's Community Center last week. And that was our first time kind of presenting everything as a whole. And we had some really good feedback. So looking forward to be able to do that this summer in the next couple of months and really work on still getting some, you know, any feedback and recommendations and like tweaks that we need to make before the PAC is presenting that in September. So I'll put all of that info in the chat. That was a lot. And then please make sure you sign up for our email list if you are not a part of our email list, and I'll be emailing out the RSVP link for that event in 2 Tuesdays from now on the 27th. So thanks.
Austin, I saw Commissioner Cameron may have a question. No? Okay, I saw your hand. Okay, thank you. Thank you, staff. I will pass it to staff again.
Yes. So just wanted to update. It's a partial update. I'm hoping to get a little bit more information, you know, in a more official sense. But as you may recall, on May 4th, the commission made a request of the city council to fully fund the 2 PAC specific staff positions. So there's 2 full-time positions, an engagement and communications coordinator and a research and policy coordinator. And the request was to fully fund those positions for the full fiscal year from July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. So again, partial update is that we have been assured that the positions will be continued until both of them until at least September 15th of 2023. Beyond that, there is a possibility for additional for at least the research and policy coordinator position. So just wanted to flag that for all of you. We got that from the mayor's office, and hopefully we'll get something just a little bit more that can be forwarded on to you with more details as that's received. So that is obviously good news to have staff be supporting this group and through the process. And we'll definitely update if we hear anything more than that. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Okay, now our next item in our agenda is we're going to hear from full co-chairs about the document and areas of agreement and name and other details.
Yes, and I will get us started. I failed to say earlier that I am Tim Pitts and I use he, him pronouns, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Police Accountability Commission for this phase. The document name and other details, we discussed last week that the name of both the oversight board and also the bureau that it would be housed under its own bureau, but we are tasked with creating the name for the bureau and then also the name for the community-led board itself. And so we did a little bit of discussion last week, I believe it was, in our meeting. And there was one actual proposal for each name, but lots of ideas and thoughts were presented and put forward. Since then, we've seen, a couple of times a spreadsheet that shows other jurisdictions and different names and different words that can make up the names for these. And so I think the idea for right now is that we would love to spend a little bit of time this evening. I believe that Victoria is going to facilitate a round robin discussion where we'll each have the opportunity to share our thoughts. We can share specific ideas. If we have specific names that we would like to put forward, we could share on recollection if there are things that we think are important that we didn't think about last time we discussed this, or if certain words are really triggering for some reason in some way. We would love to hear everything everyone thinks about that. And what would be really great to come from this discussion would be if we did have a few, perhaps 3 sort of not favorites, but 3 different options maybe that had support from a portion of the group. Then we would sort of take these finalists, if you will, and then what we would like to do is solicit further feedback, of course, from everybody here, but also use this as an opportunity to get some feedback from City Council, also from other individuals, other groups, really trying to use this as an opportunity to get some feedback, probably via some type of survey that anyone would be able to fill out, so that we can really not do this in a vacuum, but really listen to some opinions and make the best decision on this. And then we would take all that feedback in, and then we have, a few weeks before we really need to decide anything. So, but we would love to get the conversation a lot further along tonight. So I will give my other 2 co-chairs the opportunity to add anything else that they might like to right now.
I have nothing to add.
Yeah, same. That covered it pretty well. Thank you.
Thank you, co-chairs. Now we'll get a little more focus and discuss items for inclusion of the draft areas of agreement. This can be where you speak specific ideas for a name, as co-chair team explained it. And what we're trying to have is different names and then get to 3 finalists. And every one of the commissioners will participate and give their ideas or a specific words or specific names, and then we can choose 3 finalists. Staff is giving us some resources. Staff, do you want to make any comment about what you're showing, or do you think it's clear?
So thank you to Commissioner Dan, Co-Chair Debbie, and I don't know if anyone else participated, and sorry if I've forgotten to thank you, but in kind of setting this in place, these are examples. They're not necessarily a list of options so much as designed to give ideas and starting points. There are certainly a lot of commonalities in some of these names, and others are different. And so I think that members of the commission have probably been in the mode of looking at how do we get to a single endpoint for most of these documents so far. And at least at this stage of the process, it may be helpful to change the view of that and focus on having a couple different options that perhaps the public and all the other groups that Co-Chair Tim mentioned might be able to react to. One example is that certainly it doesn't appear intentional that the name Citizen Review Committee was chosen with an intent to convey the message that that the PAC saw in it, which is that you identified in previous discussions about potentially being exclusionary for non-US citizens. But that's a name that maybe conveyed that. And so having, and that's according to what PAC members have said in previous meetings. So given that, having finalists that can get feedback, you may find out that there's a good or a less good something that is evoked in a reader seeing that name or that possible name, and it would be helpful for the PAC to know that going into a decision. So that's sort of a little extra context. This is the some of the options, or I shouldn't say options, this is not limiting, but examples. And some of these, as you can see, are marked as system, and they are the names for the staff entity, whereas others are the name of the volunteer entity that's usually a board of some variety or commission. And then with relation to the actual draft document, these are the notes that you gave last time in the framing discussion. So everything highlighted isn't actually going to be part of the final document, but just wanted to make that visible. So these are some of the notes from before that may be helpful context to your discussion. And I'm happy to jump back and forth if any member would like to scroll or to go back to the spreadsheet at any moment. So I'll scroll down through this in a second.
Thank you, staff. And before we start our discussion, we ask you to follow our normal discussion rules. Please be brief each time you speak, even though you can speak multiple times. Please be facilitator, and remember that we use a weighted stack in our discussions. And finally, please be forward-looking in your comments. Will any of the co-chairs, would you like to start the discussion? Remember, everyone is participating, but if you want to start.
So I'd be willing to start. So I've kind of got to the point where I'm just ready to throw out a couple of suggestions to put on the list, if that's okay. Using that spreadsheet kind of helps. So I was thinking that the agency or the bureau could be called Bureau of Police Accountability, and the oversight board could be called the Police Accountability Community Board, something like that. Believe me, I'm not good at this sort of thing, but I figured I'd do my part to help.
That's very good. Thank you, Co-Chair David. Thank you for starting the conversation. Okay. Yes, staff. Oh, who raised their hand? Let me see. Oh, Commissioner Ajay, would you like to go? And then I will pass it to Commissioner Connie. Go ahead, Commissioner Jay. I know you have to go soon.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I was thinking that the board could be called something like Community Oversight Commission. First, commission is language that the city is already kind of familiar with, and that could be a good or a bad thing. I'm not really stuck on that part. It could be committee or whatever. But I worry about anything including the words police, because people are going to think that police are involved in the sense of not being independent. I also worry about anything saying accountability, because we don't actually know if that's possible. Like, we don't know if true accountability is possible given the power that the police association has and their ability to kind of override decisions that are made kind of communally. Or like for the best interest of the community. So, I feel like it would be a misnomer if we included accountability in the name. At the end of the day, I think that what we're wanting to do is provide oversight, because it's a recognition that oversight has not traditionally been provided in a real way. So just my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Ache. And I know Commissioner Monica, but you raised your hand, but Commissioner Connie also raised her hand first. Commissioner Connie, would you like to go?
Basically I'm just gonna echo what Commissioner Ajay just said. Maybe the use of the word police might be like confusing or also off-putting to some degree. And I think because we're trying to imagine something that you know, is kind of new and unique. I think we can use that same framework around the naming. I'm sorry, forgive me for like kind of being late to this conversation and maybe wanting to zoom out a little and ask the questions of like, what do we want the name to convey? Is there a feeling? Is there a sentiment that like, you know, when people hear it, you know, it evokes a specific understanding of like what the goals are and maybe avoiding the use of the word police. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Connie. Commissioner Monica.
Yeah, the thought I was having is the only way I would feel comfortable with having police in the name if it's actually pointing out that the police is not in control. So for example, if you use it in this way, a thought for the board would be community board for police monitoring. So the community board is first, and the purpose is to monitor police, right? So I would feel comfortable with that way of using it, or that way of putting police in there, just to ensure that it's clear that the board itself is a community board, but it's monitoring police, or the police are under that board, right? I like Bureau of Police Oversight, but not as much because it is relating to police a little bit more. So I like that a little bit less. Maybe the City Bureau, boy, I don't know. Yeah, the Bureau it's a harder one to name because I really don't want that to have police in it. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Monica. Commissioner Casey? Can you hear me, Commissioner Casey? Okay.
Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
My two things that I am just throwing into the ring, but am certainly open in any direction, is I would like to have some reference to the board's independence in there. And I think it would be nice to have some reference to the city of Portland in there too, to make it clear that this is sort of our unique thing rather than just sort of another group of, you know, buzzwords thrown together. So the Portland Oversight Board or something along those lines.
Thank you, Portland Oversight Board. Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Commissioner Catherine?
Yeah, what I looked over this list that Samir sent around, and the one that struck me was the Sacramento name, the Office of Public Safety and Accountability. And I really like the use of public safety, but maybe community safety would be better. So Office of Community Safety and Accountability or something like that. I guess I think it's helpful if we embrace the notion that police oversight is critical to community safety, and in some ways make sure that the counter narrative, which is in somehow or other holding police accountable, will undermine public safety. So that's the concept, I think, is just wanting to I guess that's why that name appealed to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine. Commissioner Sima?
Yeah, I threw one in the notes for you guys. I was actually right on board with Casey when Casey said it about having a sense of independence in there. And so that's why I was just kind of mashing in Portland Independent Community Police Oversight Board, or PICPOB for all you acronym freaks out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Sima. Commissioner Faith, and then Commissioner Dan.
Hi, good evening. Apologies, I'm off camera tonight. My suggestion is we're getting close. I'm real close to CMOB, community-led police oversight board, CLOP, Portland's community-led police oversight board. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Faith. Commissioner Dan?
Yeah, Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a member of the commission, and I think that if you look at most of the other cities, they don't name the city in the board because it's endemic to those cities. So I'm not real thrilled about adding another word to say Portland in this. Also, notably, over the years, I've been going to the Citizen Review Committee meetings, and yes, citizen is a bad word, but also review of what? I mean, there's people that don't know that has anything to do with it. So I'm glad that there's been some consensus that if we talk about police only in the sense that they're being held accountable or something, that we should think about putting that in there. Because I was opposed to it last week. Then as I looked at the names and thought about how do people know what we're talking about, I'm more in favor of putting the word police back in. So working on some of the suggestions that we had in our document and what Commissioner Aiken has been trying to get at, I would like to suggest the community-led board for police oversight for the board, and the Bureau of Community-led police oversight for the Bureau.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Commissioner Tim?
Yes, thank you. I actually spent a lot of time thinking about all the feedback last week when people were, a lot of people seem to express the sentiment that I'm hearing again about not wanting to see the word police in it. And I guess I still feel like we want this board, we're trying to take steps that the public will know this board is there and that they will be able to find the Bureau, or that they'll be able to find these people that will then help them if they need to have the police held accountable for what they might have done wrong. And so I feel like we want the Bureau and the board name to be, to me anyway, as clear as possible. I think about other bureaus and it's kind of like the Water Bureau, which is a silly example maybe to use, but I think that's maybe the most effectively named bureau in the city of Portland because everybody knows what the Water Bureau is. And so I kind of think that as much as we can, just make it to where, because the Citizen Review Committee, to be honest, before I started this, I would have not had any idea if you had said, there is a Citizen Review Committee in the city of Portland, what does it do? I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have had any idea. And I'm, a little embarrassed to admit that, but that's the honest truth. And I've lived here for a long time. And I just think if we could be as clear as possible about kind of what the goal of it is too, because I also feel like, I hear you, especially Commissioner Jay and a couple of others about, accountability not being a true end result that we might ever get to, but it is, I feel like anyway, it's the goal. And then when I hear a word like monitoring, then it just seems like a big step back from, I don't know. And I shouldn't say anything negative about someone else's word suggestion. So my apologies sincerely. But I guess I just think more that we should be aspirational perhaps in reflecting the goal of the organization with the names.
Thank you, Co-Chair Tim. I will now call on the commissioners that have not participated, and you can pass and we can go back to you at the end. But I will call Commissioner Tirsa. Would you like to go?
Sure, thanks, Victoria. I have a couple notes here. The first one, community-led it's kind of long, so community-led police complaint review board, or community-led police complaint oversight board. And that, because I also, like, I'm thinking if I were not a member of this commission, and if I were to hear someone speak about the new oversight board, I think a name that explicitly says what its purpose is for would be helpful for me to remember. So that's one that I have. Another one is Community Review Board of Police Misconduct, or Independent Oversight Board of Police Misconduct. Again, just the name would specifically say that it's independently led by the community and for the purpose of reviewing police misconduct. Those are my contribution.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Tirsa. Commissioner Sophia?
Yes, I like our discussion going back and forth, but I had put in the chat, just a thought, a suggestion, and maybe I could use the word independent because I think I like that also, but I put community authorities for peace, protection, and responsible public safety, which could be shortened as something like independent community authorities for responsible public safety. I don't know. I just like those words. I do like the peace and protection and the responsible. So I'm trying to put it all together, and I know it's kind of long, but that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. Commissioner Angie?
Thank you. I want it to be very clear, but in short, I agree with Tim that Commissioner Pitts that I want people to understand what this commission is. I really like Review Board of Police Misconduct that Commissioner Tirsa put forward. I want to keep it as short as possible. So for the Bureau, for the board, and then for the name of the Bureau, I appreciate all of the names that people have put forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Angie. Commissioner Obi?
Hey, I am historically bad at naming things and don't really have any great ideas for this. I respect that what everyone said, but I will probably just pass for now. Thank you.
That's very valid. Thank you, Commissioner Obi. Co-Chair Christian?
Hi, thanks. Yeah. I also don't really have a specific name to add. I feel like there's a lot here. I like Clop a lot because it's funny. And for the bureau name, I find myself leaning more towards office than bureau, language wise, partially because of aesthetics and also partially because I think office feels less attached to the police for some reason. Like when I think of bureau, I think of the FBI, which is like a hop, skip, and a jump away from policing. It is policing, but at a larger level. Anyway, so I feel like office is, I feel like I can throw that in there. For some reason, office feels a little safer to me on that front. And besides that, I just feel like the conversation is pretty fruitful and I'm getting a lot out of all of these suggestions. Lots of really good points, but no specific ideas. I'll chime in or throw it in the chat if I think of anything while I'm looking and listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Christian. Commissioner Cameron?
Yeah, hi. I love what everyone's doing and all the words. I was one of those people that said I really didn't want police to be in the name of the Bureau, but the more I hear it, the more it makes sense to say that word. Just so you know what we're talking about. It's just my first instinct would be like, don't use that. But for a Bureau name, I think what Commissioner Christian was just saying about calling it the office, maybe something just Office of Police Oversight, and then something for the board, Independent Community Law Enforcement Oversight Board. Should be super long, but again, everyone has great suggestions, and as soon as I hear the next person say something, I'll think, yeah, that's the one. So we got it. This is awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cameron. Let me see. I think everybody went at least once. Is that, thank you, Dr. Moses, for helping me with that. Is there anybody else that would like to go or mention something new again? Yes. Commissioner Connie?
I guess the last thing I'll say is that, names do like join the zeitgeist and become, more recognizable. So I understand everyone's like proclivity to be like, we should put police in there because that way people understand. And I think we can develop, an understanding for a name that doesn't necessarily possess that. It's like, words like Kleenex or, things like that become what the items are, become recognizable, or like sort of household names aren't, didn't exist before. And so just like looking at language in a way that like, I feel like we can develop the familiarity with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Connie. Is there any additional comments so we can review the lists that we have? If not, Co-Chair Debbie, go ahead.
I just have one thought. I know we've established a while back that this is going to be a bureau. And so that's what I'm not sure then if it's important, if we're going to have something in there that indicates what it is in terms of an agency, if it's important to call it what it is, or if it, because you know how there's within the city of Portland, there are all these bureaus. I mean, that's what we call them. And so I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out. I was just trying to, thinking about that distinction between office and bureau within our city, how it works. So that might be something to ask. If maybe we know some person who knows city government inside and out and would be able to kind of help us sort through that distinction. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Debbie. Any additional comments? I guess staff.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to note that there are 3 new items down here that were submitted through the Q&A, and one at the bottom of the name of the Bureau as well, just to mull over. And certainly do not feel fully an expert to answer Commissioner Debbie's question, but we can try and find someone to help answer that. I do know that there are bureaus that go by office, including one of the largest bureaus in the city, the Office of Management and Finance, but I'm not sure if there is a convention that helps dictate what is what and what is the other, similar to the use of committee versus group versus board or commission.
Thank you, staff. And I know Commissioner Fate suggests, and Commissioner Casey also make a comment. Commissioner Casey say agree with Commissioner Christian, an office in Bureau. I don't know, you want to comment, Commissioner Casey? And then Commissioner Fate say Office of Equity and Human Rights and Office of Civic Life are both bureaus. Also, Commissioner Faith, I don't know, you want to make a comment about what you wrote in the chat? No.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can now go and review all these suggestions. At least we all can read it. And then we need to choose 5. Can we choose 5 from all the suggestions you have? Like a 5 finalist? That will be good. Or maybe 3. I mean, ideal will be 3. This we can shoot for 3. Commissioner Dan.
Well, I kind of, the reason I laid out that spreadsheet the way I did with columns A, B, C, and D is I kind of feel like we should be able to mix and match too, with our own suggestions, that, you know, maybe some words from one person's suggestion and some words from another person's without being stuck to exactly what got written down. I don't know if that's okay. If that's what I would like to suggest, so that we're not, you know, just because you said it one way, it's not locked in. If you like part of somebody's suggestion, maybe incorporate that. I don't know, just an idea.
Yes, of course. If you have any additional suggestions, or you like one and the other together, just please, this is the time to do it. Commissioner Angie?
I do like what Dan just said, because I was looking at one of the last ones, Office of Police Oversight. I think that's what it said, and Office of Police Oversight, and I really want there to be something in there about what we're overseeing. So Office of Police Misconduct Oversight, because I want this to be really descriptive. I feel that too many citizens in Portland don't understand what their city is doing for them, and don't understand what the bureaus are too much of the time. And it's funny, I worked for the Bureau of Environmental Services for a very long time, and people always got that mixed up with water, Tim. So so anyway, I really want it to be descriptive of what this bureau is going to be doing.
Yes, thank you. That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Commissioner Monica?
I love that. I really like that. I would love to strengthen the word misconduct and make it a little bit more, I'm not coming up with a word, but I feel like misconduct is not exactly describing what sometimes is so much more egregious, right? Yeah, if somebody can help me with that, I think we're really close.
Thank you, Commissioner Monica. Who would has a suggestion to support Commissioner Monica comment? Yes, Commissioner Monica.
I think that adding Portland in there is a really good idea. Community instead of civilian would be better for me as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Monica. Do anybody else have an additional suggestions? Because we can take a very short break before going to choose 3 names. Yes. Staff?
I just wanted to know if there's a comment in the chat, which is from Vice Chair of the CRC, Yumi Delgado, and has some criteria that might be helpful given the conversation around CRC and its name. Just to read it into the record, my suggestions for criteria, even if you don't use the word police, make it clear what you do. I spend a lot of time explaining what the CRC does. Number 2, not be too similar to any existing body, and noted CRC or PSEP in there, which are the Citizen Review Committee and the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, respectively. And number 3, maybe think about if your name is similar to other successful or unsuccessful organizations elsewhere in the country, since it will be Googled frequently. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, staff. That's very good suggestions. Based on the comments, yes, Commissioner Dan?
Right, well, just so kind of going back to my own comment about mixing and matching, my suggestion for the staff was to be the Bureau of Community-Led Police Oversight, and I'd be just as fine if it was the Office of Community-Led Police Oversight. So that's the kind of thing, I don't know how we are going to make determinations if there are two things that are very similar like that, but I'd like both options to be on the table.
Thank you, Commissioner Dan. Staff?
Yeah, and on that subject, I think co-chairs may be, helping formulate in terms of how the question is framed a little bit in terms of maybe asking survey participants to say, not merely does this full suite of a name make you feel a certain way or not, but does the word office evoke a different feeling from Bureau, and could you describe that? Just spitballing here to say that that might be helpful context for all of you to have.
Thank you. It's a great suggestion. Thank you. Is there any additional names or names combination of what you see right now on the screen? Any additional suggestions or combinations?
I just want to go, I thought of, I think it was Commissioner Arce or Monica, I think it was Monica that was asking about another word for misconduct.
Yes.
I thought of, well, I just looked up synonyms. I didn't think of, I just Googled synonyms, and harm came up, which I don't know if that would be too colloquial to use, but I know we often speak in the commission about harm reduction. So I don't know if we'd want to include that possibly in a, like as a mix and match, maybe slip it into, I feel like there's so many good names, I'm not going to come up with a new one, but I feel like Office of, for police harm reduction or something like that. I feel like we could probably slip it in somewhere if that's of interest. There's a couple of other ones that I feel like might be a little too aggressive perhaps, but for the city, but I'm gonna say them anyway because I feel like they are stronger than misconduct. Abuse and violation, or misuse of power, something like misuse, something like that. Damage was another one too that came up, but those are all a little stronger, and I'm not sure if they might be too much for the name of the Bureau and the community board, but those are some other alternatives to that misconduct word, if that tickles anyone's brain for a new idea. There you go.
Thank you, Commissioner Christian. They're very good ideas and suggestions. And I also want to notice that Commissioner Sophia also provide other words, and misconduct, disobedience, and transgression. Are there any other combinations or suggestions for the names? Okay, it's 8:21. We will come back at 8:26. And when we come back, before we go, Commissioner Dan, go ahead.
Well, is it possible for the list to get emailed to us so we can actually look at it during the break? Or paste it in the chat or something, just something so we have, because I don't know how I'm going to think about this if I can't see it.
Yes, I was gonna suggest to leave it on the computer, but I think your suggestion about emailing it is also very good. Staff, you will be able to email it, right?
Yeah, I'll also put it in the chat so that the folks who are here in the audience can see it as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dar, for bringing that to our attention. It's 8:22. Let's come back at 8:28, and we will have a couple minutes to review the list or to make combination and try to get to a list of 3. Okay. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. We will continue with our discussion, and we are going to try to get 3 names from the list we have. Yes, staff?
So if you would like to, as you're proposing, suggesting these things, 2 things that may be helpful. As you can see in number 1, in both cases, there was sort of a linkage between the proposed community board for police accountability and Bureau 4. If that's something that may be helpful to note, that would be helpful, I think, for co-chairs as they're kind of getting to how to frame the questions. And then another thing is, as I think it was Commissioner Dan noting that the primary purpose here was community-led police oversight, but if it's okay if it's office or bureau. Similarly, you know, accountability or oversight between 2 and 3, those sorts of things might be helpful too. And the other thing that might be helpful is feel free to suggest many of them. It may be helpful to do some sort of a straw poll kind of process to come up with this, and if that's permissible to co-chairs, we can talk about that more later on if we have time, because that might not be something that we result in by the end of today. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, my idea was pass it to the co-chairs and ask them how would they like to do this, to choose or to go to the discussion of choosing fewer suggestions.
We have not had an opportunity as co-chairs to discuss this in much detail. So I think it's really awesome that we're to this point. I think for me, my goal would just be that our 3 finalists, if we're getting 3, truly are the 3 that have the most sort of support among people on the commission. And I don't know how to get to that without some type of a straw poll, or everyone picks their top 2 and then we sort of keep points. I'm not quite sure. I would love to know, Commissioner Iona or Commissioner Christian, maybe what you think.
So I feel like I've been at Zoom meetings where they have a, you know, there's a little survey that people can fill out. You know, I mean, but somebody's actually got to turn that list into one. I have no idea how long it takes to do. And then, you know, we could each vote for 3, and then you put it all together, and you know, you've got, you know, and then we could see what the top 3 were, and then, you know, we wouldn't have to be stuck with them, but it would give us a kind of a sense of what the you know, what people sort of like the best, and then we could kind of talk about what attributes of each one were appealing to us, and maybe do some mixing and matching. But that's the best I can come up with for an idea of how to approach it. Because yeah, we can't. It feels like we just can't keep talking around in circles, because there's too many choices and there's too many of us.
Thank you. And staff just created a board, and also you are
working on it.
okay. He's working on it. Also, Dr. Moses offered to create one, but staff is creating one. And also Commissioner Faith said she can put in a survey real quick. I mean, there is different ways to do this, and you are the commissioners, you decide how you want to do it, but there's definitely support from commissioners to do it in a different ways. And we don't have to finish today, but if you want to, we have a couple more minutes to work on it. Staff?
Yeah, it may also be helpful to hear if I know some of the suggestions have come from the public. There's a pretty good audience tonight as well. So if there's folks who, in addition to whatever else you might want to give public comment on, that might also be helpful to get sort of initial feedback before the process there too. And then we're also able, because this isn't a final decision of the PAC, we could also do, I'll verify this, but think we're also able to do a straw poll between meetings as well. So that you could come ready with that information between meetings as well. The final decision on a name does have to be in a public meeting. That's a transparent decision and all that.
Thank you. Thank you, staff. Co-chair team.
Yeah, I really appreciate the suggestion to be able to hear. I know we have public comment as its own segment of the meeting, but I would love to know, and especially if there is any robust conversation or feedback, would love to hear that before we go much further.
Okay, great. We can go then to public comment to see what the public has to say about the name. We will now take open public comment on the issues the PAC is discussing, especially on the name. Or community members can also tell their story about policing and police accountability. We ask members of the public to keep their comments or questions to 3 minutes in length and raise their hand in Zoom if you like to speak. Now it's time for public comment, and we'll invite, and I see Mr. Barnett raise hand. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Barnett.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Obviously, there's a lot of really good generative dialogue going on, and lots of very, very good questions. And I'm glad it's been such a diverse kinds of opinions. In other words, it's not like everybody is following one train. So this is, I think, real healthy. My point is to raise a couple of things to keep in mind, kind of like as criteria for whatever you're going to decide. And that has to do with, number one, obviously it's key to, keep the concepts having to do with community and community-led, et cetera, and other things that come up. But the other thing that's just as important is the environment, the context that this is going to exist in. It. What I'm referring to is this is a city government, local government matter. So that means you're in a political context. No matter what you say or do, it's political, and people will be attacking it from a political perspective. There's, I don't have to convince anybody that this is still the era of MAGA groups and Trump groups, and all kind of people are going to attack it, okay? So where's the political context? So whatever name you come up with should be able to be strong enough to wither any kind of political text. The second is, this is an entity that will exist in the context of Portland government, which means budget. And I have years and years ago worked for the city, and I know there are whole kinds of discussions and arguments that come on between bureaus in the city. And when it comes time for the annual budgets, people will be fighting and scrapping to keep their budgets from being cut or to increase their budget for whatever reason. And this will too. This will be, you don't think everybody's going to fall in love. Oh, you're looking out for the good of the citizens and you're trying to hold the police accountable. Yeah, that's all nice and good. But the city is a city, and it's political and it's money driven. So you want to have a name that gives you as much strength as possible vis-a-vis those two aspects, the political aspect and the budgetary aspect.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barnett, for being here and for your comments. We really appreciate it. And I also will invite more members of the public to participate. I want to remind everyone that they don't have to comment about the name. They can comment about other issues, or they can tell their stories with the police. Yes, I see Mr. Delegado, please go ahead.
Hey, everyone. Yume Delgado, he, him, CRC Vice Chair. So I think I already stated the meat of what I wanted to say in my my Q&A, but I do, looking at these names, just my 2 cents is I think using the word bureau or office makes it very clear that you are part of the city, perhaps in a way that people do not always perceive IPR and the CRC to be. So looking at the bureau name suggestions, 1, 2, and 3, I think communicate that very broad, very clearly. I think number 4 also does. If you do choose the word office, you could consider using the phrase independent office, much like IPR does currently. I think the only other suggestion I would make is that the name of the Oversight Bureau should be mirrored in the name of the Bureau itself. Because again, I think the relationship between IPR and CRC currently is one that is not very clear from the naming convention. So it is far be it from me to say that you should choose one name over the other. I am grateful that that is your task and not mine, but just some thoughts in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delegado, for being here and for participating. We really appreciate it. Next, I'm gonna pass it to Babs Vanelli. Please, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. So I have zoomed in to many of your meetings, but tonight I just zoomed in right before you took the short little break. So and I understand that this is quite a task that you are facing tonight. I must say though, what caught my attention when I first was reading through all these different options was the one that talks about peace, protection, and public safety. And I know that doesn't kind of address what people have mentioned about the need to make sure this is a bureau and this is sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, but there was just something about reading that phrase. There it is, community authority for peace, protection, and responsible public safety. Just kind of those 3 things touched my heart, if I can say, as a lifelong Portland resident, and kind of captured maybe that little bit of idealism that's still in me now that I'm in my 70s, that maybe, just maybe, we're moving in a good direction in our city as we're moving towards expanding the city council, the districts, etc. So I just thought I'd toss that in, and that those 3 terms could be incorporated with bureau of or office of. So thanks for letting me speak. And sorry, I just came a little bit late to the party tonight. Thank you.
We're glad to have you here and thank you very much for participating. We appreciate all your ideas and comments. Thank you. Now I'm gonna pass it to Barb Reinich. I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Yep, it's that simple. It's super simple. Hi everyone, it's Barb Rainish. I'm a PSEP groupie and a member of the BHUAC. I just want to say, because I've seen a lot of, I'm going to call it public confusion over what's the city's job, what's the county's job, what's Metro's job. So if it fits, I really would suggest having Portland in the name to just to make that part of it clear. Because just because it's a bureau isn't going to tell people that. That's it. Thank you guys for all your hard work. I can't believe how much time you guys have been spending on this.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here and I appreciate your comments. Okay, I don't see anybody else from the public that wants to make a comment. No, thank you. Thank you everyone for participating and for your valuable comments to the commissioners. We really appreciate it. Now, we will need to move to the next item in the agenda, but the commissioners will receive a survey that you can wait and think about all the suggestions on the names, either from staff or Commissioner Faith. Is something that they may discuss about it, but you will receive an email and invitation to fill out the survey. Thank you. The next item in the agenda will be next steps. And yes, I will pass it to the co-chairs and staff for next steps. Co-chairs, do you have anything for next steps, or do you want me to pass it to staff first? Oh, before we do that, Commissioner Sophia like to add one more suggestion, and I think it will be great to include it. And her suggestion is Independent Office of Defenders for Justice and Accountable Community Policing Public Safety. Thank you, Commissioner Sophia. We will make sure it's added to the list. Thank you. And in the meantime, I will pass it to Co-Chair Debbie.
So we're on next steps, is that right?
Correct.
I can take it, Debbie, if you want me to.
I thought Samir, oh, Christian, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I got lost in the sauce and I heard next steps and I was like, oh, that's me. Why? Oh, sorry for my pardon my French. Cool. No worries. So we're going to move to member curiosities next for next steps, which as always is a brief period when members can bring items to discuss. Can be questions or follow-ups. It can be an article you read, whatever you want to share. We're not going to vote on anything at this time. And we want to give multiple members the chance to share. So please only take 1 minute per person if you can. If anyone has any other ideas for names, I feel like here might be a place we could throw it in. We won't vote on it, obviously, but if you want to add it to the list and it comes to you, feel free to add it here, I believe. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair Christian. Thank you. Yes, Co-Chair Debbie.
Yeah, so my member curiosity, I brought it up earlier in the evening during the broader system update. Again, curious about that survey that went out and thought maybe the easiest thing to do would be to send the commissioners a copy and a list of who received it. Somehow it'd be nice to know what that questionnaire was all about. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, is it okay, co-chairs, to respond to that?
It's okay with me.
Okay.
Go for it.
So this is what co-chairs of the subcommittee on broader systems sent to the groups that were other advisory groups as part of the process of sort of fact finding around developing text. And it said how many members is your group authorized to have at maximum, how many are currently filled, what's the appointing, who's the appointing authority. There's does your group have defined expectations of outputs or outcomes when creating this? Who does your group send them to? What are some recent actions or recommendations that your group has made? Have they been responded to and or implemented? Where in the city's org chart are you institutionally housed, or whose staff supports you, and what is your annual budget from the city? And is your group defined under any specific law, city charter, city code, settlement agreement, etc.? Does this law require any sort of response, decision, or implementation of your group's recommendations by any part of the city? And the responses received are in the bottom of the most updated draft of the document. To date, that's only from the Training Advisory Council, unless somebody sent it in today, which if so, apologies for not, nobody's seen it yet. Just speaking personally for a second, I learned a lot from those responses that was not on the website for that group. So definitely wanted to express appreciation there. And additionally, there were 5 specific groups that were also asked if they were interested in briefing based off of some of the questions that were being raised there with that subcommittee. And I'm not sure if co-chairs Seema or Chris, Seema or KC want to add more, but that's what the questionnaire was.
Thank you, staff. Co-chair Seema or co-chair Casey want to add anything?
I think Samir covered everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Casey. Okay, then the next, for next steps, yes, Commissioner Catherine.
Thank you, Victoria. I just had a quick question about what the status of the filling that vacant seat is. And I apologize if that's been reported on and I missed it.
That has not been reported on yet. I've been told it's likely to happen at the end of this month by council. So that would mean the 28th would be the meeting of the council that would likely occur during. That's not confirmed or anything yet, so I don't think anyone is able to yet be held to it. It's not currently on the council agenda, but that's the target date at present. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Catherine, and thank you, staff. Any other questions before I pass it to staff? Commissioner Dunn?
Yeah, well, I just want to, I wasn't 100% sure if the answer to Commissioner Iona's question or Co-Chair Iona's question was that we are going to get a copy of that survey, but I agree that I would like to see it, the actual survey. And for the folks on this commission who weren't in attendance at Tuesday's meeting, it caused a lot of consternation among community members. I heard from a person who's not even on one of the advisory boards today who had concerns about what was perceived as, the purpose of this survey was to see if the commission was going to absorb or shut down some existing oversight boards. And I just want to make sure that folks in the audience and folks on the commission know that, I don't even know the process by which that questionnaire was sent out. But this is everything is just, basic broad discussions, and there's, things are in flux and nothing's been decided. I want to make sure everybody understands that because I have concerns about it too. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunn. Okay, I will then pass it to staff.
Thank you. So what we're going to talk about here might seem a little bit early, and that's by design, in part because it's a short phase of work, and in part because one of the things that came up during the selection process for co-chairs of this phase is a desire to have the co-chair selection for the next phase, which is the last 6th phase, happen relatively quickly. So for next steps today, there are 2 things under phases of work transition tasks. The thing that is going to chronologically happen second, I'll just mention here, which is that full commission co-chairs ideally would be selected around the June 29th meeting, which is 2 weeks from today. I will note, and there'll be an email going around asking for members to say if they want to be a candidate. Several members already have, so that's also notable, but you're able to add or remove yourself from the list at any time, and we'll email out the list as we get closer once every member has had a chance to email in on that. But prior to that, one of the things that might help members decide if they want to be a co-chair or not, or decide who they want to be a co-chair, is knowing what the work plan might look like for that phase of work. And so this is the first thing we're going to talk about, or the thing we're going to talk about right now, which is going to occur first chronologically, is discussing the work plan for the 6th phase of work. This is a draft. It's prepared by staff. Every phase transition, we talk about it, get member feedback, both during the meeting if time permits, which it might today, or between this and the next meeting. It gets revised, and then certainly co-chairs are actually, making all the decisions in terms of the agendas, and co-chairs or the membership in terms of other questions of organization for the phase. So this phase is likely to end July 10th or 13th. That's roughly the target timeline. And so wanted to talk about what the next phase looks like, because some of that work is going to be getting underway prior to that. There'll be a portion of this phase that's kind of getting started and overlapping with the next. So this is what the agenda and scope says with from the definition of the concluding phase. It says draft the language of the code change proposal to the city council with assistance from city attorney's office and or outside counsel. Share final draft proposal with experts and affected parties and create community support, including taking public testimony, final commission votes on code package, and develop reports. And I'll mention here that reports is always with the parenthetical S, because the commission can author a final report. It can also, if the recommendations are not a consensus, it can also author a minority report to accompany and explain the position of those who weren't in favor of things. I'll also note that up at the top here, this wasn't in the agenda and scope definition, the phrase and settlement agreement amendment proposal, because that came, that was discussed a little bit after the agenda and scope and has not currently been put into it, but staff added those 4 words for clarity. And then the agenda and scope does talk about 2 outcome documents. And again, this middle one has been added for clarity: final code change package, final settlement agreement amendment package, and final reports of the Police Accountability Commission. In developing the structure, some purposes that we were looking at for this draft is the timeliness of the overall process. The City Council has authorized the commission to meet until August 31st. It has also assigned a great deal of items under the scope of work. So second purpose is completing the assigned scopes of work. The third group is the PAC's commitments to itself and to this process, the values and goals. There's several goals and success considerations and success criteria in that document that you sort of pledged to circle back to, and wanted to make sure that there was time and space in the work plan for that. Also in the community engagement framework of how you get there, and the community agreements of the process to achieve that. Ensuring that the PAC's intent is reflected in the legal code text that is drafted and is eventually improved, that nothing's sort of lost as areas of agreement are included, is something that many members have talked about. Ensuring the legality of recommendations to the City Council, and finally, equity of member contributions into the process and final texts. And so just a look at sort of the timeline for the PAC and working backward from August 31st. These are all the last possible dates that these items should happen. So again, likely to end the week of July 10th to 16th with phase 5. But in parallel to that, there's council briefings. There's a briefing with the Bureau of Human Resources, which is required. Co-chairs of some previous phases opted to wait on that because the BHR briefing is specifically about ensuring that the proposals are in line with labor rules, including collective bargaining rules. And in the fact-finding phase, those recommendations didn't exist yet. So that's happening in parallel. Reviews, which we'll talk about in a second, and community input. The next couple weeks will be primarily focused on public hearings, consultations, listening sessions, and getting more council feedback through briefings. By now, the final draft is not the first time that the final text would be seen. It's just, it would be all together in a single document and neatly formatted by at latest the week that crosses July and August. There'd be at least 2 weeks to develop and propose changes to those and discuss through them and make amendments, with time in between for legal counsel to evaluate proposed amendments to the legal text as well. And then by at latest the week of the 14th through, sorry, that's actually the 14th through 20th, final votes on the code change and settlement agreement amendment package. And the reason that that has to happen then and not later is because the reports have to reflect what the proposals are. And so there needs to be time, if there are late changes to those, to have the reports be developed. Final votes on reports would ideally be the following week. And that leaves an extra 1 week only for in case something needs more time. As you can see, this is a very tight schedule. There's not a lot of ways to make it work faster on the front end. And as of right now, there is no ability to make it extend on the back end because the council deadline is August 31st. So that's a very tentative calendar. It doesn't have meeting dates in here yet, but we're working on a draft of that, and certainly we'll talk to the eventual co-chairs once they're selected, which is another good reason to have those co-chairs selected early. The draft work plan flowchart has legal consultations along with the full commission's work. So again, through mid-July, finishing phase 5, doing the briefings, revising previous documents, which is based on resources and inputs, which we'll talk about in a moment, public hearings on the final drafts of documents at whatever the most up-to-date stage of their development is. And by the beginning of August, there would be, from legal consultations, a single public draft, final draft of the code package for review, and members would be able to propose and give feedback on those, which would be reviewed for legality as well, so that in mid-August and late August, that can all be approved along with the final reports, and that's sent over to council consideration. I'm going to pause here for just a second to let everyone read this. Some of the items in here that you may have questions about are explained in a couple of slides coming up. So just wanted to mention that, but I'll just give like a pause for a second. And I guess the only other thing to note, which I'm not sure if it's been noted in a public meeting yet, but the PAC has retained outside legal counsel, or I should say technically the city attorney's office has contracted with outside legal counsel for the purpose of providing legal services to the PAC. And so that's part of the legal consultations process. Moving ahead real quick. So changes to the structure. There are some similarities to previous structures, but there's no specific to phase 6 subcommittees. Instead, legal consultations with legal counsel to review the draft code text that they'll be working on and ensuring consistency with previous PAC documents, which is to say ensuring that the intent of the PAC is still manifested and represented in the text. Continued coordination on community engagement events as per usual, but with events as was noted earlier in the update on that, more focused on review and input of the documents. PAC still makes the decision on the code and settlement agreement recommendations, and then the final report, possibly a minority report. So switching gears, this is kind of a weird flow chart. I was struggling with figuring out how to display the next information here. The revision and updated process. So these are sort of 4 different processes, and they may not be sequential. Some of them may overlap. So essentially, there are texts that are under development in phase 5, the transition plan and the areas of agreement on broader system. There's the 6 documents from the preceding 2 phases: access to information, officer accountability, structural oversight, board membership, oversight staff, and reporting and transparency. They go through what the term filters may be confusing, but sources of input for revision. And then the PAC can make any updates that they need to those documents, and those in still idea form, conceptual form. Some of those have been stated that they would be for code change purposes or for settlement agreement purposes. Others are more recommendations that the PAC thinks the oversight board or city should consider. And so as part of this process, it will be determined whether this needs to be converted to legal text or not. For the legal text, that would go through the legal consultation process to get draft recommendation text. And for both after that, both the legal recommendation text and the report text would have members able to review and propose changes, decide on those, and then eventually take the 2 votes, well, possibly 3, but make the decisions on whether to adopt these recommendations and send them on to city council. To explain a little bit further on the revisions and filters process, there are some particular sources of input that members have flagged or co-chairs have flagged over the last several months as things to circle back to. Where I'm using the term filters, that may not be the best term, but haven't come up with a better one. So if you've got one, open to suggestions. But basically, that the PAC can look at these things and say, hey, we like the document the way it is, or you as members can say, here's something to make an adjustment to. That includes things that members have flagged in the garden plot to circle back to. One example is in the broader system discussion, there was a citation of the structural oversight document, and their co-chairs flagged something that seemed to be missed in that. So if and when the PAC circles back to structural oversight, you can make that update. Council feedback, there was what you've heard verbally at the work session and the memo that City Council sent to the PAC after the work session. There's community input, and the input trackers being updated to be sent out by the end of this month, so that you've got time to look at it during, hopefully there'll be a break in meetings. The equity lens, and that has to do with your values and goals. Looking at that through the sense of not only the considerations, but also the bigger picture values and goals. Again, legal counsel feedback, one thing that council brought, city council, apologies, legal counsel and city council, I'll try to be specific about that. One thing that city council brought up was ensuring that legal counsel reviews all of the proposals to ensure that they're within the boundaries of established law in terms of state law, federal law, city charter. And then finally, we may also, as staff, note gaps or contradictions, and that really has primarily to do with reviewing the assigned scope of work from the city council. Because there's like a checklist there that we're developing to kind of say, here are all the things that the city council asked the PAC to do, and just as a preview of that, most of it is done, but just in case that anything isn't, then that would be something we can point out. And then just to explain legal consultations, and this is the second to last slide. Again, everything's evaluated through the filters, and the PAC may revise it. Also, prior to any legal consultation meetings, legal counsel can review the areas of agreement and draft code changes and settlement agreement amendments, or again, some of the text will not need that because it's going to be in the report and not necessarily in need of conversion to formal code text. I should also note here that some of the documents are already written in a very similar fashion to code text, and in some cases were actual code text with just a minor revision already in the areas of agreement. So that may not need a whole lot of work. And what is a legal consultation? It's basically that the PAC schedules a meeting with the attorneys to review and update proposed changes to the text that converts it to legal language to ensure that they reflect the PAC's intent, and just make sure that it's not attorneys doing that and that it's just accepted, but that there's an opportunity to weigh in on that. That would be occurring with legal counsel based on scheduling, prioritizing schedules of the members of the original subcommittees who may know it better. So if, for example, the subcommittee on officer accountabilities members might have priority in terms of weighing in on the legal text that explains the complaint process, because they're ostensibly the folks who might know a little bit better about what the intent was, if there's some sort of, do we word it this way in legal text or that way? And so that's essentially what a legal consultation would look like. And so in a logistical sense, that means talking to the attorneys about what are some time slots you have available, offering them to members, and then trying to match member schedules to a specific content area and schedule those so that you have some time ahead of time to read whatever the attorneys have drafted, time to talk to them, and then eventually it gets consolidated into one big document that the members will, as a group, still review and look at as part of this flowchart process. So that is a lot of information. I know it's a ton. This phase of work is very different in the sense that it doesn't have areas of agreement. At this point, it's taking all of the work that you've already done and making it into the final thing. And it's the members of the subcommittee on transition plan this phase are getting a little taste of what that looks like in terms of developing the thing itself and not a document that helps build to the final outcome. But the final phase is designed to do that for everything else. So I'll pause here, take any questions. This is not final. This is a first draft being presented for member feedback. And so happy to take feedback now, happy to take feedback in between the next 2 weeks, and certainly try to get this a little bit more worked out by the 29th meeting so that full commission co-chairs can be selected knowing what they're getting into. And I'm happy to take questions. I saw Commissioner Dan, Commissioner Catherine, but I don't know. Victoria, if you want to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, staff. Commissioner Catherine?
Yes, thanks for that overview. I just had a question about the process for the filtering that you talked about. That is really the first box of that timeline. If we don't have subcommittees, I'm just wondering how, who would be charged with doing that? Would that be going back to the original subcommittees who put together those documents to review them for potential changes, or is that something that the entire commission will be doing? I guess I'm just curious about your thinking on that process. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because the full commission approved it, a subcommittee couldn't supersede the decision of the full commission. So it would need to come back to the full commission at some point. And so not that this is set in stone, but the sort of rough process would be to have, similar to previous phase of work transition tasks, where there's been an opportunity to update the phase 1 documents, the bylaws, the agenda and scope, all that, to have that sort of process where members have a timeline to submit proposed amendments to the substantive documents, the areas of agreement documents, and then a designated window of time in full commission meetings to go through each one and make some updates. And to, in advance of that whole process, provide you with a great deal of resources around all of this, including the community input tracker. You've already received the council feedback to date. The garden plot summarized in a single place. You already have the values and goals, legal counsel feedback. I know that the outside legal counsel has just started to review all these documents. They just got brought on at the end of last week. So they're just getting into everything. And as you know, there's been a lot of work that you've done. So they're taking the time to and reading it over. And then staff is we're basically going to release that checklist, which is essentially all the different places that the PAC has been asked to do something. And not only is it done or not, but where is it done? So that if anyone asks, you can say, yeah, that question was answered in some way in officer accountability section B2, A. And so that's the goal there. And then based on all that, giving you the opportunity to look and see, maybe nobody thinks that there needs to be a change. And then there doesn't need to be a special meeting about it. It's only if someone proposes it.
Yeah, staff, before we continue, I just want to notice that Commissioner Connie make a comment about asking if the meeting is going to continue because it's 9:10. I want to do a time check. And I know it's just a couple more minutes. What do you think, staff?
I defer to co-chairs on that.
Co-chairs?
Well, Commissioner Handelman's had his hand up. Maybe we can answer that question, then stop.
Okay, I will count Commissioner Dan, and I will remind us a minute. Go ahead, Commissioner Dan.
Thanks. So the drafting has been described as happening by legal counsel, but I don't know if you mean by city attorney's office or by PAC's contracted legal counsel. So that's part one of my question. And part two is, whoever that entity is, do they realize that they're going to have to be writing this huge document in a very short timeline to get it to us? Thanks.
That is both very good questions. To the second one, I think they both know it is a large task and that it's a short timeline. I'm not certain if they know it would be on them, because the answer to the first question of whether it's outside legal counsel or the city attorney's office is I don't know yet. I do know that I'm going to get some clarity on that in the next, let's say 4 or 5 days at latest. And I know that both sets of attorneys are reading the documents now to help with, at the very least, the legality review, which so to that part of it, which is pointing out, hey, we think this might be illegal, that's both. But in terms of the drafting, and I'm saying 4 or 5 days with the hopes that it's much less than that. But I think it's a little hard to know without knowing when to schedule a call with, try to schedule with both of them to understand it and make sure that there's an understanding of where one starts and the other stops. So yeah, and that's why that was left deliberately non-specific as to which legal counsel, because I don't know the answer yet. hoping to know again within the next couple of days. And certainly there's a purpose to having outside legal counsel. So I imagine that that was part of the intent, but that is purely speculative on one person's part at this moment.
Thank you, staff. Now we will pass at the conclusion of the meeting. We will check on garden plot recap. This is time for facilitators, co-chair, and staff to summarize any items already brought up today, which didn't fit into today's agenda. We'll recap those items here and use them in developing future agendas. We won't be using this time to add new items, not previously mentioned, or to discuss any items, but we will use this list to develop future agendas so these items can be addressed. Do you have any items for garden plot, Dr. Moses?
I do not.
Thank you. What about co-chairs?
Nope.
No, I have
Thank you.
nothing.
No.
Thank you, co-chair team. Co-chair Christian? I don't think he's here.
Sorry,
Okay.
I did say I have nothing. I said it at the same time as Tim.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear it. Thank you very much,
That's okay.
co-chairs.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you. I know staff doesn't have anything. Then, as a reminder, you can now submit advanced public comments to the Police Accountability Commission via web form, voicemail, or postal mail. Thank you to all the members who attended today's meeting and for your contributions today. Thank you also to the interpreters. Finally, thank you to the members of community for attending and contributing with your thoughts, questions, and opinions. If you're not already signed up for email updates, please also sign up to receive updates from the PAC. The next meeting of the full commission is June 29 at 6:30 p.m. It's now 9:14 and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Good night, everyone.